Ladies and gentlemen, it's better late than never. Right now on the phone with me, I have the man behind the two cuts I played. Come around, and the joint bearing his name, Nick's Groove, Nicolay, one half of Foreign Exchange. Welcome to the Time Machine, my man.
Thanks a lot, man. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me on, man.
It's no problem, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I feel real good. We're really close to finishing up the new record, the new Foreign Exchange record. So I really feel, I feel great.
All right, that's definitely what's up right there. Now, tell me about your life experience growing up in the Netherlands.
I mean, it was, I grew up, I had a really great childhood. I had a lot of opportunities, and one of them was that I was, able to come into contact with various types of music and learn to play various types of instruments. And from there on, I started, playing my own music and stuff until I came across hip-hop through watching Yo MTV Raps, and so that became sort of my, my platform, if you will, and, the rest is history by now with the Foreign Exchange record dropping and my records after that.
So I'm sure you probably was busting the pockets getting those import U.S. rap records, right? Yeah, I mean, I really when I really started listening to hip hop, it was the they call it the golden era now, 90s, early 90s, so from 90 to like 93, 94, and I try to get everything that I could get my hands on. I bought everything. So, by being over in the Netherlands, you guys were basically listening to a lot of American stuff because, what is the music like over there in the Netherlands? Does it have its own unique style, unique flavor, or does it combine the culture with a lot of the American stuff that they're hearing and seeing?
I mean, it does. There is a lot of, right now, in especially where I'm from in the Netherlands, the thing to do right now is to rap in a native language, and that's something that I feel is part of the involvement of hip hop, in other territories. But personally, for me, growing up with the hip hop that I was listening to, which was A Tribe Called Quest and Dilla Soul and the Native Tongues family and everything like that. And on the other side, I listened to stuff like, the first Nas record, Biggie record. And so for me, I really felt like that what I wanted to hear was that, that original, American hip-hop flavor. And so I started looking for, American MCs rather than, people in Europe.
Now, explain in a nutshell for those that don't know the story of Foreign Exchange, how you and Phonte of Little Brother hooked up.
Right. Well, I had, at that time done about, I'd done a couple of beats, and I really kind of wanted to see what other people thought of that, and so what I did was I posted them online on a site called OK Player, which is where I, used to, and still to this day, sometimes hang out online, talk about music, records coming out, and one of the cats that heard the beats was Phonte of Little Brother, and they just pretty much had started that group at that time, and he was like, man, I don't know if you've got any plans for those tracks, but we would love to bless them. And they did. It started with 2 tracks, then it was 4 tracks, then we, slowly but surely pretty much had a whole album done, and BBE Records released that in 2004, and that was Connected.
Which has definitely been a favorite of mine since I've been at WAG, which was the same time that it was released and the start of the show, because I remember playing Nick's Groove and come around like crazy. Because
Word up, man. Word up. Yeah, I mean, that record, it did well. I mean, it was a record that critics loved it, fellow artists, loved it. Radio cats loved it because, it has a lot of cuts that you can play, and it has a lot of variety. So, it really got a lot of love across the board.
So, who would you say influenced you producing, your production style, and you to produce?
What was the last part again?
All right. Basically, the question restated is, who influenced you to produce, and who would you say influenced your production style? Well, I'd say from a production standpoint, the first person that I really think inspired me to think about like sound and how things sound and the production of a record was Prince. I used to be a huge Prince fan, and his production, which obviously was done by himself, but was definitely something to take notice of. That was the first time that I really thought like, wow, you can take music or take sound and make it so much better by producing it. And Dilla is the other cat that I have to say has been a sort of a teacher for me, even though I've only met him once, and it was more a situation where what he brought to the table was so similar to what I've always felt that I wanted to hear in hip hop. That I feel that now that he's no longer here, it really feels like something is gone, and it seems like ever since that happened, that it's almost, getting faster and faster and faster, that hip-hop is becoming something that I want to say like a shadow of itself almost.
Mm-hmm. And for those of you that don't know, J Dilla was a member of the group Slum Village and passed away a couple of years ago, and he put out the critically acclaimed album Donuts. So R.I.P. J Dilla.
As V, yeah, man. Rest in peace.
And now, you're saying that you feel hip-hop now is kind of in a shadow of itself, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now, back during the golden era, you had your balance. You had your different lanes. Like, if you didn't like, say, your Public Enemy or NWA, you had your LL. If you didn't like LL, you had Queen Latifah. Or you had De La Soul, Special Ed. And now, it's like you don't really have that. It's so narrow. And then if you try to do, more like what I like to call backpack rap, and the only few people that can straddle the lines between the two is like Common, Mos Def, Kanye, and you have Talib Kweli and various others that can't seem to straddle that line to be backpack and also commercially viable.
No, you're absolutely right. What is really different, in my opinion, from like, let's say 15, 20 years ago is that the balance is totally gone. Like you're exactly correct. You could have all these different styles, that would still, get a piece of the pie. You'd have really underground type things like, you had Onyx or Das Effects or whatnot. You had, you had like De La Soul, Tribe Called Quest. You had Public Enemy, but then you had, more commercial stuff. And so all of that coexisted and made sure that there was such a variety to choose from, whereas nowadays the mainstream and I want to say the establishment really focuses on what makes money, and then I feel that it really has pushed out a lot of different sounds to make room for basically the big old formula of the hit and what's hype at one certain moment. And it's really, really hard to stay independent and to stay believing in what you're doing and to kind of stay fighting against that. But that's exactly what artists right now got to do.
Mm-hmm. And remember that industry rule that Q-Tip broke down and checked the rhyme. I'm not going to say it because if you're a true hip-hop head, you should know that by now.
Yeah, that's one of those classics where it's like you got to know that one. And you know what? That is still true. They still are.
Mm-hmm. Now, with the rise of the internet and by you and Phonte doing your thing through OK Player, and with YouTube now, gone are the days of you having to drive to the big cities to shop your demo, and you can pretty much build your own grassroots movement and come to the labels like, hey, I'm able to have these amount of hits and blah, blah, blah. And do you think that the music industry will slowly wise up and adapt to the internet, because the music industry is hurting because going gold nowadays is like going platinum?
Yeah, I mean, they call it like street platinum when you sell like 10,000, and no, I mean, I think honestly, it's already very much evolving towards that whole new media concept, because I think that people no longer really use the
existing channels to get that new music. You know, in the older days, you would see a video on MTV, or you would, you know, read about a group in you know, The Source or any other kind of magazine. But for one, MTV does hardly play any videos anymore, and you know, there's a lot of magazines that no longer exist. So people use, you know, word of mouth and blogs and whatnot. And if you're an artist and you don't really have a label behind you, you know, you have so many opportunities nowadays to promote yourself and to get heard by people in other countries, overseas, and you name it. So if people are smart, you know, if an artist is really smart and outside of making great music has sort of a business mind and knows how to use that, then there's a lot of opportunities out there right now.
So tell me about the making of the Dare album.